good day, and welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I'm your host, Dr. Coach Danny Pueblos, and today we have a good friend of the show and four-time NAIA National Coach of the Year, NAIA, FCA, and Vanguard University Hall of Fame coach, 2018 NAIA National Championship head coach, and current Vanguard University women's basketball head coach, Russ Davis. How we doing, Coach?
I'm doing good. Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. I know, you and I have kind of made our connection through Coach Sammy Doucette over at Orange Coast College. And, just kind of learning more about you and just following, your journey, from the few years I've known about you, definitely inspire me. So I wanted to bring you on to share your story and to be able to show people and we'll get into all the nitty gritty, but show everyone about your journey and about how you got to where you are today as a coach. And obviously you've done more and you've accomplished more than just coaching, which is why you're a very special guest here. So thank you very much for coming on, Coach.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I wanted to talk about first about your experiences. Kind of walk us through the journey from when you started coaching and kind of how you kind of started that, like what got you into it, and then kind of walk us through your career, up until this point.
Okay. Well, I was an athlete, start off at Saddleback High School and then moved to Irvine, went to Irvine High School and sophomore year. And I was on the basketball team at Irvine High. Back then, we only had freshmen and sophomores, so I was part of this first graduating class in 1979. So there goes my age right there. While I was in high school, I have a younger brother that's like 8 years younger than me, and he was involved in the local Boys and Girls Club basketball stuff. And then they asked some athletes, some players and stuff to coach that. So I got my first start at coaching, through the Irvine Boys and Girls Club. And then when I was done with that, when I was done with high school at Irvine, the JV coach the JV coach back then got the head coaching job at Woodbridge High School in boys. And I just graduated high school and he asked me to come over and be the sophomore boys coach. So I was like, barely 18 years old over there coaching the sophomore boys. And then I kind of worked my way up through that. Was doing that and being a varsity assistant. And then after about 9 or 10 years, the women's coach at Woodbridge wanted to take a sabbatical. And so he asked me to coach the program for a year. So I gave up coaching the guys and was the head girls coach for the year while he took a sabbatical. Same coach that I think Sammy played for over there. And so anyway, I did that for a year. Then he came back. We were very fortunate that year to win CIF. That was a school, the women's first CIF championship at that point. So that was a lot of fun. Learning experience, switching from the guys to girls, obviously. So I didn't do much different. I just kind of coached them, how I coach. So good or bad, that's just, didn't want to change too much. Sure. So anyway, I did that. And then when he came back, I got offered a coaching position at Estancia, so I'm like, well, do I want to do that? I'm like, yeah, okay, I can run my own program. I had to totally rebuild that thing. So basically went out to PE classes and looked and see who was, athletic enough or who thought might want to play basketball. Kind of brought them in. That's probably the best coaching move I made in my career, was I had to bring it down to basics. So most of the guys we got over at Woodbridge at that point were all ready to go already. They're good players. So, you just got to kind of maintain them, but I had to really dig in deep and really work on the small parts of the game fundamentals, which to this day are very important for me to go over with even my college team. So I was doing that. I did that for a total of 5 years. And during my 5th year, the coach at SEC at the time asked me if I wanted to come over and help him out and do some of the defensive stuff over there. So I did that, and then he ended up getting sick during the season. He ended up retiring, and then the AD over there asked me if I wanted to step in and be the head coach. So anyway, I did that, and that's where I've been for the last 27 years. So the funny thing is I've never even had a job interview. If I did, I don't even remember it. My whole coaching career, I was just like, I was asked to do this, asked to do that, asked to do this, and now here I am. So
Sure.
it's very rare that you can do all this stuff and not even get a job interview. So yeah, and that's how it's been. So I've been coaching women now. This will be my 27th year as head coach of Vanguard University. And I was girls coach at Wood Stauncher for 5 years before that. So this is my 32nd year coming up, coaching, from girls to women.
Awesome. So you had mentioned having coached both males and females. Um, is there a difference? I mean, have you experienced any differences as far? I know your approach to coaching, might not have changed, but as far as like the personnel, the players, have you noticed anything different? Because I've gotten asked that before. From my time coaching OCC, but obviously you have a lot more experience. Is there any notable differences as far as like
Yeah.
the players?
Yeah. When I first started, I think the biggest difference was you obviously couldn't do, you know, you couldn't design lob plays and, certain things like that. Right. But, and I think back then, a lot of guys, no matter how old they were, we had a really good program. They all wanted to go play major college, and some had aspirations to be, everybody wants to play in the NBA, right?
Sure.
Where, with girls, they just don't have they do now it's a lot better now than it was back then, but they don't have the opportunities to play as much as the guys do. Like when's the last time you drove by, a park and saw, 5-on-5 girls go there, and like another 20 girls waiting to get on and play pickup, outside.
Sure.
I mean, I've never seen it,
Mhm.
unless it's an organized program that's down there. But I used to play basketball at 38th Street all the time down in Newport. And then, there's always you have to wait. So you try to bring in a bunch of ringleaders, bunch of ringers. I mean, and, bring these guys down there, and so you can run the court for a while. Because if you lose, you got to sit out an hour or two because
Yeah.
you can't get on the court. But so the difference was for me, like, improvement with the guys you see maybe weekly or every other week, because they've already played so much. But in girls, you see it daily, and so I really like that aspect of watching people improve and shine and do things that, they didn't know they could do. So, I mean, not that guys don't improve, but I think especially then because they didn't have as many opportunities that, you were able to see a quicker improvement with the girls.
Sure.
And of course I had to change some things. I remember my first film session, people were, they were worried about, they're like, I remember trying to show them like how we're going to fit an out of bounds play. Right. And they're like, why does that girl wear her hair that way? Like, I can't believe she wears her hair that way. She should do this, whatever. I'm like, I finally had to stop. I go, listen, you guys, we're really not worrying about people's hairstyles here. I'm trying to go over like how we're going to beat these guys. Right. So
Yeah.
it was an adjustment on some of those things. And of course, I learned at an early age coaching girls and women that I had to be a good listener, because if you don't hear people out and listen to them, then you have no chance of really coaching them. It's just going to be, I mean, it's going to be really difficult. The progress is going to be limited. So to coach women and female and girls, to coach everybody actually, but I just think women have a tendency to listen more and want to be heard. And then afterwards, like, okay, how can I help you? And then you work through it that way. And they're so appreciative of that because I know I've seen it work, and then I've had so many people tell me that. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a testament. I know you play a part of it as far as like the growth of like women's sports, especially women's basketball right now. I mean, you look at like with the women's soccer team getting equity and pay, like you're seeing those things happening more than ever, and I know you played a big role as far as on the basketball side of things. And that's why, like, one of the many things that was sad about losing our guy Kobe was that seeing what he was doing for like girls basketball and having the mama teams, right? And I know he had his girls and all that, and you had a special experience with Kobe, right?
yeah,
So talk to me about your relationship with Kobe, if you don't mind.
yeah, yeah. It's even hard to talk about. But I mean, obviously, I don't mind sharing it because he really touched me and blessed me in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
Several years ago, I got reached out by a guy in Nike that Kobe was interested in maybe talking with me about his daughter Gigi. So I went down to his old office down in Newport there, and we met in a conference room for, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we just shared stories about basketball and philosophy. And at that point, Gigi's favorite player was Katie Lou Samuelson, who was playing at UConn. And so she played in our program, our club program. And so Gigi had looked that up, and then she told her dad that she wanted to play on our club program. So that's how that went down. And then he called Nike and checked up on me and talked to his guys there, and then set it up. And then we started talking, and that was the key. He said he wanted me to coach Gigi, when she got to the high school level of club, and they're on to help her, And so from that point on, you know, we became friends and talked quite a bit, and they used our facility over at Vanguard to practice a lot of times. And so we built that special relationship. We had many talks, and then after about 3 or 4 months watching him coach that team, I told myself that there's no way that he's going to not want to do this, and that by the time she gets to high school, that I won't be coaching her because Kobe's going to want to do it. And sure enough, but next year I was teasing him about that. He goes, "Yeah, man." He goes, "I got this." But we're going to still work together, and you're still my man, and you're still
Yeah.
family, and this and that, And so anyway, it just kept building. And then when I got diagnosed with my cancer, I remember telling him, like, the day before I was going in, my first day, I had radiation, uh, like at 7 a.m. And then I had to be over right down the street and start my chemotherapy at like 8. And that was like from 8 to 5, just a long day. And I was telling him about that. And he kind of put me aside and said this. And then he went to his car, and he came back out, and he had planned to give me a couple his Mamba shirts, So I got these Mamba, you know, mentality shirts or whatever.
Yeah.
So he goes, "Yeah, wear these to your treatment." So I did. And then he would, I would see, I was still been able to go to practice and stuff for a while. And then things didn't turn out great there for a while, and it was getting a little rough. And I was in the hospital for quite a bit. And then after that, I had to learn how to walk again, and I needed special attention. So they put me into a, 24-hour assisted nursing facility down in Newport. And then Kobe was, checking on me, and I was having a couple rough days. And then next thing you know, I get this text from him. It's like, "Hey man, what room are you in?" And I go, "In this one." He goes, "Well, I'm outside. I'm coming in to see you." I'm like, "Okay." And I didn't have time to like tell the nurses or anything, right? So he just kind of walks down there, walks down the hall. This is before the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just thinking about what's everybody going. Some of those people probably didn't know who he was because I was one of the youngest people in there, even at my age, right? And
Yeah.
so it was just different place. And so anyway, he came in there, and he ended up spending good 2 hours, a little over 2 hours with me. My therapist came in and was time to walk again, and I said, "Hey, we'll be right back. It's not going to take long." He goes, "No, I'm going with." So we're walking down the hall with my therapist. I'm strapped in with a belt and I have a walker, and I'd only previous gone down to the hall and back, right? I literally had to learn all of my transfusions and all the stuff I've been going to. I lost everything, so it was
Mm.
pretty rough. And so I was going down the hall and back. And then when we got down the end of the hall, I started to turn around, and they go like, "You ready to go back to the room?" The lady that was taking us, the therapist, and I said, "Yeah." He goes, "No, no, no, he's not done yet." No. And I look at him, he goes, "Yeah, let's go this way." Anyway, to make a long story short, he made me like, he started calling me names because I wanted to go back to the room. I wasn't working hard enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm walking around the whole hospital. I was exhausted by the time I came back, but I did it. Then he just went into his mentality, talk and challenged me on different things. And then our friendship went to a whole completely different level, and he was just there for me during some of the hardest times. So, yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're probably thinking like, man, I thought you came to visit me. You're over here putting me through training now, like.
Yeah. But
But I get like that. Yeah,
the funny thing is I was teasing him because, there was times where that place was understaffed, right? So
uh,
there's times where I would hit my button like I needed air or something, or I needed something, right? Because I
sure,
couldn't eat anything. So they didn't come by and check on my meals because I had a feeding tube, right? So I had a feeding tube for over 2 years. So nothing went down my throat, So now I'm hooked up to this thing. So they had to feed me through a tube through this.
yeah,
And so I even had to walk around with that. I mean, it was a mess. So, but
jeez,
the point is that I'd hit this button, and sometimes I would hit it, and it would be like an hour or two, and nobody would come in and see me.
wow,
I'm like, good thing it wasn't like an emergency, right?
yeah,
This morning, I always tell the person, I go, hey, I'm sitting here waiting. I'm dying in here because there's no air, and it's like I need air. I'm dripping in sweat, and nobody came by.
sure,
But but once Kobe came to visit me, and everybody knew who Kobe was, and I was like, wait, who is this guy? I got a special room. And then every time I hit that buzzer, people were checking on me within a minute. And so
oh
I
jeez.
remember telling him, I go, hey, dude, man, you got to come back here. The treatment was like first class. I went from like, who is this guy? Don't worry about it. We'll get you when we get to you, to like, what do you need? What can we do for you? Right.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
was just funny. It was kind of hilarious how my care changed all of a sudden. So,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
and that's awesome. I mean, that's so great because obviously, and that's why I brought him up. Because I know that you guys have a special relationship and a lot of stuff that like no one would ever know that story until now, right? And about the small things that he's done for people behind the scenes, and
I
like
got
just
daily texts from the guy, I mean, or every other day, like, hey, family, he do spam, and
yeah,
I
yeah,
do, and he'd give us traditional, like, the arms flex thing, and stuff like that. But for the guy as busy as he was, you know, to take the time to do that, really meant a lot to me. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, and you are the embodiment of that Mamba mentality as far as like everything that you've gone through with your journey battling cancer. I know you talked about it, some of it already. But I just like, and I see you when you post stuff and, and I appreciate that kind of stuff. I appreciate you having that willingness, that perseverance to continue where, frankly, a lot of people, might not have the same strength and might not have the same approach to keep going. I mean, you're talking about, a feeding tube and walking around with tubes in you and all this stuff. I mean, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. And so, like, talk to me about like that journey, and what continues because you're still going through it. Your journey with this, and what continues to like push you through, and to continue to persevere through these different challenges.
well, when I first got diagnosed with this, it was kind of weird. I mean, I've because I was first told it was tonsillitis,
Mhm.
because I had like a growth in the back of my throat, right? So then they
Yeah.
gave me these antibiotics and this and that, and didn't work. So I went back in there. So then they sent me to this one doctor over here, and didn't have the greatest doctor bedside manners. I go into this place, and I'm waiting for him, and he comes in. He opens my mouth. He looks. He goes, "Yeah, you got cancer." He goes, "Yeah, I'll be right back." And that's exactly what happened. He leaves the room,
Wow.
and I'm in there for like 5 minutes, and then one of his nurses comes in and goes, "Okay, this is our next steps. We're gonna get a bio." And I'm still like, "What happened to my
Process.
tonsillitis?" And my head's spinning. I remember walking out there, just shaking my head, and called my friend who's a nurse and going, "What?" Talking to her, and she's like, "You got to get a second opinion." And she's all mad about how this guy handled. I mean, he never came back in the room. I never saw him again. You know?
Wow. That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, man, I mean, come on. You don't tell somebody they have cancer and say, "I'll be right back." You never see him again. Have your nurse come in like 10 minutes later. I was stunned. So
Even just the way he did it too, just
yeah,
like
that's what,
They
yeah,
didn't
that's
allow you to process it and just like, oh, here it is. And
yeah, like
it's
sit
so
down, I'm gonna
so
tell you
cold, you
something
know?
or whatever, or
Yeah.
he was so
Wow.
confident. And it turns out he was right, but still the way he handled it,
Yeah.
I wasn't really appreciative of that. But you know, it is
Sure.
what it is. Things happen for a
Sure.
reason. And I'm okay with that. So let's see another person, and they were just like they were great. You know, so well, this we're gonna get into a biopsy. So we did that, whatever. So that's what we did. And then I had a bad tooth and another one that was getting bad in the molar or whatever. And so before you can start radiation, you know, in on my head and neck and throat and all that, you know, they don't want any infection. So they said the best way for you to get through this is be do a clean slate. Well, what's that mean? Well, we're gonna need to get rid of all your teeth. So I'm like, what? So yeah, I wasn't ready for that.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
next thing you know, I'm at the dentist, and you know, on it's about 3 years ago to this date, really pretty close. That I I went in there and well, I met with a guy, and then I went back a couple days later, and they took all these pictures and this, and then I went in there. My brother dropped me. My brother went in with me, and it was like the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, or I always get those mixed up, Labor Day, Memorial Day, which whatever one, you know, the one in May. I still can't
Yeah.
remember which one. So anyway, I go in there, and it's like, you know, 11 o'clock in the morning, and I'm out of there by 12 o'clock, and they broke all my teeth, put them all out of my mouth, every single one of them. And
Mm.
and I'm like, when I walked in there, they just basically said, you know, what they're going to do. And then I said, well, am I going to go under? And they go, no, we're just going to give you like some shots,
Oh.
you know. So they gave me all these shots everywhere, you know, my gums and everywhere, and they just started. I just started hearing all my teeth crack and break, and just
Uh,
I mean, it was unbelievable. That was I've
yeah.
never even I mean, that was like those movies where you go in the back room and you break somebody's teeth to get them to tell you something, you know, like the old
Yeah.
gangster type movies or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm gonna say gangster, but you know, those movies that
Yeah.
guys are doing that
Yeah.
stuff, you know, but whatever they were. And so my and then, you know, and then I'm like, at this point, I'm all pumped up to give me all these shots, and I'm just sitting there, just taking it, you know, just taking it. I'm like going,
Gee.
what in the heck? I'm walking, then, you know, we're out by like 12:15, 12:30. And then as soon
Yeah.
as we leave, they put a close sign up. You know, my brother's like, well, that's why they're in such a rush, because it's a 3-day weekend. They're trying to get out of here because there's nobody else in there except for me,
Yeah.
you know? So anyway,
Oh, wow.
so I was a mess, and I was going to the Dodger game the next day. So I'm like, I was like ballooned up, you know, like it was crazy, bleeding everywhere. And I mean, it was a mess. I was in pain, couldn't even talk. So yeah, so I was without teeth for the longest time, because in the last 18 months, I've had like 41 surgeries slash procedures where they put you under and go in there and reopen my throat and look in there and do all this stuff. So, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, all of them been at Hoag
Jeez.
Hospital here in Newport, and I'm like Norm there. You walk in, everybody, hey coach, you know everybody, and it's like that's not a place I want to be a regular at,
Sure.
but I'm blessed. Like when I first got this, I had some people reach out that went through the same thing. A lot of coaches, and one coach I didn't even know I've heard of course, was Bill Snyder, the legendary football coach at Kansas State.
Mhm.
He called me because a friend of his that I knew told him. So I got a random phone call from Bill Snyder, and he walked me through what he went through. And I'm like, here's this Hall of Fame college football coach taking his time to call me. I mean, that really touched me. You know,
Sure.
he walked me through it, and he also talked about how it was important to be positive, and and how he handled that was like, man, I'm going to follow what this guy's done. And so the whole time I've just tried to be like, I never once said, why me? Why is this, this and that. I mean, you have your moments because you're human, but it's like, you know what, I can't be a coach and tell my kids they have to work hard every possession and to fight through things and have me not do it. And I'm really, really strong in my faith, so I believe that I was going to persevere through this. And so I had a lot of people praying for me, and that was important. So, and I've always believed, like, as hard as this is for me, I always know there's somebody out there that's in a harder position than what I'm in. It's worse off than I am. So I'm thankful for what I have, and I'm going to work hard to change it. So I just had that mentality the whole way through. I wasn't going to ever give up. So that's kind of how that's been. So yeah, to have a feeding tube for over 2 years and have no teeth for over 2 years, and to go through all this stuff is, miss games, and that wasn't the ideal thing, but that was part of my journey that was set up for me. And I'm just trying to get through the best I can. So here I am today. I'm getting through this, and knock on wood, I'm a little over 2+ years cancer free. And now I'm just going through some of the things that all the radiation did, because basically it just closed my whole throat shut. It was like a welder. When you weld something, it just weld that, because they had to go in and get all that cancer really spread. It was stage 4. They told me when I first got diagnosed. So that was good stuff. So anyway, and that's where I am today. So I'm back at it. I still have a couple of hiccups now and then, but it's not slowing me down. And I'm very blessed and thankful to be in the position I am today, to share my story to you and whoever's watching. That, it's like Jimmy B said, don't give up, don't ever give up. Just keep, there's things we can do. Like, even if it's just one person on here that watches this show that is impacted, then to me it's worth it.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Coach, for sharing your story. It's something that I've appreciated from previous guests I've had on here. Talking about their own story, their own struggles and challenges that they persevere through, and like I have people tell me who listen to different episodes of how, like, it wasn't about the my guests like career or anything like that. It's like it's the story about perseverance of like health issues or family or other adverse situations that really got to them, as far as like, oh, that's awesome. And that helps, like you said, it helps people listening to these kind of stories, listening to your journey and through with perseverance. Like, that's what I love. And that's why I know, my listeners have said they, yeah, it's nice to talk about, the basketball or the musicians and the film producers I've had or whatever, all that stuff that people do, but it's other stories, right?
Yeah.
It's the stuff behind the scenes that really like just kind of add that's amazing substance to an already incredible, like in your case, journey of your life. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, the basketball stuff's obviously great. I love basketball, and very, very blessed to have the accolades and the career that I've had up to this point. But if you really are a coach and you're doing it for the right reasons, then you understand that you're a small part of that is the getting the players to buy in, and they're the ones that are actually out on the court doing everything that you're trying to get them to do. So
Yeah,
we could never be who we are without our athletes.
absolutely. And like, you are, again, the embodiment of perseverance. And this is why, one of many reasons why I love sports, is because, as a former athlete myself, as a coach, and now as a sports psychology professional, I've seen how there's so many just overlapping skills that can be learned through sport, right? And you're a perfect example of that, of how we teach our athletes to persevere, to move on to the next play, to control what you can't control, to work hard, to respect authority, to work as a team. All these things are great, like, skills on the court, but even off the court as well. So I'm sure that your players see what you're doing, with your challenges and how you've overcome, and you're still just kind of going through that journey, and with your health. And I'm sure that whether they tell you or not, like, that's probably helping keep them going, especially those days where they're like, I don't want to go to practice, or why are we doing this drill again? Why are we doing peer pressure, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure, like, throughout your career, you've had some pretty notable experiences with your different teams. So talk to me about that, right? Since we're back on basketball here, talk to me about. I'm sure you've had many. I'm sure you have a ton of accolades that we'll be here for another hour talking about. But Talk to me about some, notable experiences that you've had as a coach during your tenure.
Well, you know, yeah, I'm really lucky and blessed to do that. But I kind of had taken over a program that hadn't really won more than 10 games in the season. So, and I had been in a situation where I was really fortunate to be in that we always had pretty successful seasons. So it was a challenge there. So I had to really quickly build a foundation. I think it's important to have a foundation. When I was a young coach, I had all these rules, and now I don't like to have rules. I like to have standards. It's funny how things change over the time, right? And I have like non-negotiable things, but I think you can't have too many of those. You got to make them plain and simple.
Mhm.
So we've always tried to have that cement. So that first team I had, I tried to implement stuff that I thought would work all the way through and stand the level of time. So we started with the cement thing. So we've always called that first group to cement the foundation of what we built, and we try to build on that. One of the things I'm really proud of is that we've always had a winning season. And for the last 23 years or so, that we've been ranked in the top 25, during every season. And this year we had a streak broken where we had like almost close to 200 straight, almost 20 years of straight being in the top 25 poll. And
Wow.
it'd be easy for me to sit here and tell you all these excuses that happened, but we did have but because everybody had crazy things happen. We had some things that normally doesn't happen to our team, like forfeits and stuff like that, and the whole team getting COVID and me missing games. But we needed people to step up, and we needed to try to take care of that, and it is what it is. But we still end up with a winning record. We weren't happy with how the success we had as far as beyond that, but we were happy how we persevered through tough times. So now we wanted to fix that. Now we're going to be a little deeper, and now we should be ready back on track like we normally are. But I think this season I really learned a lot about things, and it really made me more appreciative of all those championships and Final Fours and national championship and Elite Eights and all those things that we've been able to get to, you know that those weren't as easy as maybe people thought they were when we were going through that, because there was a point there where we did that almost every year, and then went to like 20. This is the first year in 20 years or 21 years or something like that we didn't get to compete for a national championship, and I wasn't happy with that. So instead of like blaming everybody else, I mean, I took responsibility. Like, okay, well, I got to be a better coach, and I got to get some more depth in here, and we got to go a different way. So I think those are some of the things that I've learned. And also, like I said, also I said earlier that you got to be a really good listener, and people want to be led, but they need to understand why you're leading them. You just can't go out there and say, you got to do this. You got to explain them a little bit better. And I think one of the most underrated things in team sports is team chemistry. You really got to work on your team chemistry, especially nowadays. We live in this keep score mentality, and there's a lot of self-entitlement out there. And I don't really want to necessarily blame the kids. I think that if you're giving people things and you're letting them be that way, then they are. I firmly believe that, and I tell our recruits this and our players, they hear it a lot, is like, I'm here to not only help you get better in basketball, but to teach you life skills. So we're going to try to teach you life skills through this sport that you're going to be able to take with you past when you graduate and go on. Because, if we're just worried about winning games, then we're really not doing you any favors.
Yeah.
We have to teach you this. So there's certain things that we do that are going to be applicable for what you do in the real world, because most of you aren't going to be playing past college. So you're going to be out there in the real world for the next 50, 60, 70, however many years. And this is your time you're playing basketball is short times. People get caught up like basketball is their identity and that's who they are. It's not. It's just something they do. Their identity is completely different from the sport you play. And I think those are things that I try to teach that I've learned over the years, because I haven't always been that way. If I'm going to be transparent, when I was younger, it's like, we got to win, we got to do this. Now I want to win as much or more than anybody,
Sure.
but I want to make sure we're doing it the right way, where we're winning past those games. Like when that game starts, I want to win, no doubt. But I want to make sure too. And then I've erred, I've messed up. I'm not the easiest coach to play for sometimes, because I'm very demanding. Because I want somebody, when they go in the real world, to know that they've learned a tremendous work ethic. I want them to be, when they graduate, to have nothing left, to give it everything they have, and know that I gave everything. I don't want to look back and say, man, wish I could have, would have done this. So those are kind of things that I think is important for coaches. And I also think that as soon as you think you know it all and you can't get better, then you need to leave and not do it, because you're hurting yourself and you're hurting any players you have.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I love that approach, coach, and that, because it's something that I've always taken the same approach from my many years of coaching different sports. Because and people, when we say that kind of stuff, as far as like wanting to teach our athletes skills that they can carry on with them, and emphasizing that part, stuff away from the sport. Sometimes you hear people say, "Oh, that you're not a true winner, or you don't want to win." Who doesn't want to win? I mean, that's like a it goes without saying, right? I mean, we don't coach, we don't spend all this time recruiting and watching film and practicing, to lose, right?
Right.
It's just like, it goes beyond that. And it's everything you said. I'm like, yes, I'm thinking yes, because it's something that I was preaching, especially like in my time coaching at OCC, at Orange Coast College. I teach those girls, like, and it's something I do, working with my clients too, is that we talk about that, like, and you hit on a great point as far as the identity factor, as far as, because so many people, they identify, and not so only in sports, but I mean, you think of any career, right? They identify with what they do. And like, one thing that I've helped my athletes and clients recognize is, like, what you do is not who you are, right? Even as a coach, like, like, we're a coach, you coach basketball and so forth, but like, it goes, like, us as an individual, it goes deeper than that. Like, like, we are leaders of people. We are, mentors or brothers, sisters, whoever, right? Whatever role you play, because what you do is not always going to be there, right? Especially when we're talking about, these college athletes who, some of them will make it to the next level, which is a very, very small percentage of the population who goes pro. And the others, the majority of them, they have to think about the next chapter. And for a lot of them, it's scary, right? Because they've been doing it, for instance, they've been playing basketball their entire life. And to think about life after basketball is scary, right? And so that's one thing that I've definitely been working on. That's why I'm glad you brought it up, because it doesn't go talked about enough. And like, I've done work with the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and we're providing like mental health resources for them, because a lot of those players, once their football careers are over, they think, oh, holy crap, like, who am I now? What do I do? And then they don't know how to cope with it. And that's where all the substance use and abuse comes into play, depression, anxiety, all this stuff, right? And so I'm glad we are addressing that stuff now, because it is a big component, and like, kind of transitioning to the next chapter. But even like during, like, while these athletes are playing, being able to separate what you do from who you are can help you there, because like, and I know you've seen this, where sometimes you have an athlete who might have a bad rep in practice, or a bad drill, or bad practice in general, and it'll snowball, right? It'll snowball, and all of a sudden that bad drill turns into a bad practice to a bad week, and into the games. And now that can start even like entering into their personal lives. And now they're thinking that they look at themselves as like a failure, right? And so like, that's a big thing. I'm glad, that you address it. I'm sure your teams are thankful for that, because it's something that a lot of coaches, don't talk about enough.
I think another thing that when you say that stuff is, it's important that you categorize things when you're an athlete, like in high school and college, even professionally, right? Like, things that we do is, like, I always tell them, when you walk through those doors, then I don't want you thinking about, your bio class, or your relationship or something's going on with a friend or any other thing, that now it's focused for basketball. And when you're in those other situations, I don't want you to worry about basketball, you know. So we need a clear mind, because people get so worried, especially with the NIL stuff and you know social media, people making so much money on their social media stuff that sometimes that stuff gets more prioritized than the actual getting better at basketball and or getting better at the life stuff. So we have a thing where we call it's quiet time, 5 minutes before we actually start practice. Like there's no talking. You can shoot, focus, but you clear your mind and get it clear to be ready to focus on the task at hand. Because I always tell people, like, the teams that have the less outside interferences are the teams that do the best. Like if you're worrying about keeping score, like why is that person playing and I'm not, like, well, he or she made a turnover and they get to stay in and I made the same one, and why am I coming out? And then that team becomes a team of, like, the show Survivor,
Mhm.
right? You try to vote people out, you try to form alliances, and then you have a split team that goes back to team chemistry stuff. So as
Mhm.
coaches, it's important that we always make sure we tell people what we think their roles are and how they can change it and where they see them, versus them sitting there thinking, why aren't I in this and that? Because there's so much body language out there and there's so much, like, pressure of people to perform, and if they're not performing, and it's like parents are keeping score, players are keeping score, everybody's keeping score, fans, and not the scoreboard, but how you do things. So you have to be consistent as a coach as well. So, but one of the things too we do is we have eye contact. It's real simple. Like, hey, when a coach is talking, there's only one coach talking, and you have eye contact. And I do a demonstration. I go up and ask somebody a question, and they give me the answer, and I start looking all around the room, and I go, "How do you feel?" Well, I feel like you're not listening. Exactly. So, what coach wants to go out here and tell you and show you what to do, and have you guys not even looking at them or talking to somebody else, right? So, if you go in for a job interview, you're not gonna be looking around the room when they ask you questions. You're gonna be looking them in the eye, and that's another life skill right there. So there's so many times I go watch practices or games where there's huddles and nobody's even paying attention to the coach. They're looking all over the place. You know where they get that from a lot of times? Because they watch the college and NBA games. You watch an NBA timeout. Those guys are sitting on the scorebook. They're looking in the stands. They're not even, and next thing you know, they go out and then they can't run the play. Late in the game, they'll pay attention because they want
Yeah.
to win. But during the game, most of the time, it's like you watch an NBA team layup, watch the layup lines. They just kind of go in there, walk in there and throw the ball up and dunk. You know, how's that getting you ready for a game? I
Yeah.
know it's professional, but everybody else is watching that. And then they think if it's okay for the pros, why isn't it okay for me?
Yep.
So those are just some, I mean, I got a million analogies and examples, but I'm just saying those are some little things. And
Yeah.
I'm a big little thing person that turns into, don't just focus on the big things. Take this. So we have two basic standards, okay, in our program, and one is don't let your teammates down, and that basically covers a lot of things we just talked about, right? And
Yeah.
the other one is no drama.
Yeah.
You know, drama kills.
Yeah.
It'll go right through a team. So we would have a lot more national championships if we early in my career, if I would have found out about some of this stuff beforehand instead of after the season. So
Yeah. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. It's and I think it comes down, like as you said, the kids, they're a certain way, but it starts with the foundation and
yeah,
the consistent factor of the program that you build, that you maintain.
yeah,
And also, being at this level, and I've experienced in OCC, going out recruiting, um, I would, I would report back to Sammy and tell her what I thought about recruit. But a big thing what I would tell her is, I talk to her about the intangibles, right? The stuff that you can't coach, or it's not as easy to coach because some people have it or some people just don't. And I like when I'm going out recruiting, I'm looking at their body language. What do they do when they commit a turnover? What do they do when they miss a shot? Or just those situations. Do they power and go to the end of the bench? Do they talk back to the coach? Do they Do they put their teammates down, right? Or do they lift them up? Are they, when they're on the bench, are they like cheering the teammates on? Are they high-fiving? All that stuff. Like, that's the kind of player that I want, because the other stuff, like, especially if they're coachable, it comes easy. That's what I tell them. I tell all our athletes, all our players, like, if you come in with an open mind and a hunger to grow and to be coached and to learn, right? And kind of how you talked about before, of never being satisfied with knowing what you know now. Like, that'll make our jobs easier, and that's where the magic can happen,
Right.
because there's so many times, and like I see athletes who are like, the talent's there, but like their behaviors, like how they disrespect the coaches and their teammates. Like, I don't want that, especially when you have like people who are on the fence of like, do we want them or not, right? It's that stuff, the intangibles. And I'll tell the athlete when I go talk to them after a game, I'm recruiting, and I tell them, like, yeah, all of the basketball stuff is great. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't, but it's the other stuff that I really appreciate. And that's the kind of stuff that I think every program should want to kind of use as a foundation.
The great players are the ones, like, for example, since we're talking basketball, are the ones that understand that they have those tools and gifts, and they push it to a whole nother level, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those guys are the guys that you just say one name and you know who they are, like
Yeah.
Larry, Michael, Kobe, Bill, Kareem, Magic. I mean, I know I'm a Laker fan, so I'm naming a lot of Lakers here, but what I'm saying. But a lot of those guys, that the one name guys is because they've earned that just calling them by one name, right?
Yeah.
And so they realize, like, hey, I got a talent here, and I'm not just going to go through the motions and have everybody tell me, like, man, you had so much potential. I mean, that potential to me is one of the largest words in the vocabulary. It really is. Like, how long do you want people to tell you you have potential? That you haven't even reached you're not close to reaching your potential. But that's great when you're younger, but when you're older and you're not close to reaching potential, what were you doing in between?
Yeah.
So that's why we got to push them. But yeah, but hey, thanks for this has been great. I'm glad I get to share this with you. I hope people got a lot of this out of it, got a lot out of this, because I did.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, Coach, and thank you for sharing your stories and your journey. I know whoever's listening is going to take a lot from this, a lot of value. And I look forward to. I'll be coming to your game, especially I have a former athlete of Alexis Ligon coming on your squad. But either way, I want to come out and support you guys and just support you, because I appreciate not only you as a basketball coach, but you as a person, and just what you've done, and what you continue to do. And I look forward to seeing the product on the floor. So thank you again for coming on. So
yeah, if you ever want to, I know we got to talking, and we probably have a lot more we can talk about. But if you ever want me to come on again, or if your listeners have any questions or whatever, then they can always reach out, or we can do another show if you have time or whatever. So I have been doing this for a while, so I have experience. If there's any other way I can help you or anybody else, just reach out. Not a problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Coach. And so thank you again, Coach Russ Davis. If you want to get in contact with Coach Davis here, you can email him at rdavis@vanguard.edu. Okay, so again, thank you, Coach Russ Davis, for taking the time out to speak with us today. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, subscribe down below. Okay, we have a lot of awesome guests just like Coach Davis to here today. Thank you all for listening. Again, thank you to our special guest, Coach Russ Davis. Have a great day, everyone. And we'll see you guys next time. Be easy, guys. Take care.